Hey, welcome, Adam. It's great to have you on the Talent Leader Insider podcast.
Excited to be here, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I wanted to invite you on this podcast because I wanted to have a candid conversation between talent leaders to have a dialogue around things that are happening on recruiting. The audience wants to know what's been going on, the latest tech and processes and the strategy that talent leaders like yourself are doing.
Let's do it. Sounds great.
Amazing. Just for the audience to know a little bit about you, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Adam Baines. I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition with Knix. Knix is a leak-proof underwear company. I've been around for about 12 or 13 years. We create products, underwear, bras, sleepwear, women. So young teen girls getting their period for the first time, women going through pregnancy, postpartum, incontinence at different stages through their lives. We create these amazing products that make them feel comfortable, seen, less vulnerable, and at the same time as doing all this, trying to normalize the taboo that comes with those things that are so normal. I've been a TA leader now, gosh, dating myself. I feel like 12 years I've been in leadership roles, but largely within direct to consumer brands. I started out with Target Canada when they came to town, and then spent 7 years at Canada Goose scaling the talent acquisition organization there. I have done a lot within retail, e-commerce, manufacturing, supply chain across these businesses before landing at Knix about a year and a half ago now.
Amazing. What a career.
It's been fun. I've seen a lot.
You've been in some very iconic Canadian brands, right? And so you must have seen quite a bit. And I love that you mentioned what Knix is doing. As a girl dad myself, in an area where it's all new to me, but I'm excited to see brands out there really empowering young women.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. Another girl dad over here, and she's not quite ready for Nick's products yet. It's nice to know that we've created a category that
Yeah.
is going to be there for her as she gets older and lifelong, really, if the brand keeps doing things the way that they've been going.
So tell the audience a little bit about how we met.
Oh my goodness. Mutual connections. And our friend Christine, I think, first introduced us when I got to the Knicks team. And we were talking about Ribbon AI, which is an AI agentic interviewing tool that really takes the place of that initial screen, at least for the way Nix is using it. And we were playing back and forth, having lots of conversations for the better part of a year. And I think, like a lot of brands, but at that time, early 2025, AI was like not as normal of a thing in recruiting as it seems to be now. Like very much behind the scenes, not something that's meant to be felt by the candidate. But Nix was getting to a really interesting place where we were opening stores left and center. I think in 2025, we opened 11 locations, and this year we're opening about 8 or 9 more. For a company that's still in its startup phase, trying to keep costs low, the option at the time was add more headcount to be able to staff these stores. We're talking about 10 to 20 people per location, depending on the sales volume, meaning we need a lot of screens to get down to the right number of interviews, to get to the right number of hires. And Ribbon eventually just became the great option for us to get to that top of funnel conversation with our candidates, allow us to handle the volume. We had stores that were stacking on top of each other with the timing, which really was putting a massive burden on my team and the bandwidth from a resourcing perspective. It has made massive impacts, not just from a time savings perspective, but we've been able to work with the Ribbon team on really honing in on a lot of different things, the way that we're leveraging it on the back end, getting data out of it. I would say also it's been like super useful as far as just ensuring a good brand experience. Like we survey our candidates, there's been no love lost along the way. And I think that's just been something that's gotten sharper and sharper from a candidate experience perspective in the time that we've worked together. And I think we're going to continue working together. There's a lot more use cases that we see here at Nix for getting Ribbon in the mix.
My recollection is the first time I met you, you were forward thinking when it came to recruiting. You were always talking about being very data driven, being very efficient in the process. And that's rare in the recruiting space, as you and I both know. Sometimes it becomes a little bit transactional. I've done this for a really long time myself until I moved over to being a founder. And I realized there's two types of recruiters out there: very data driven, very forward thinking, innovative. In our company, we call it AI build, right? And so I feel like you're in that camp. And then there's the other camp where they're trying to adopt and trying to figure it out. But really cool to see in our conversation from the first day that you were thinking about what the future is like for your brand and organization?
I was just going to say it's tricky to play on both sides sometimes. Like
Yeah.
as I mature, I get more senior in my career. Data it points you in the right direction, but like you really have to have that heart, that human side of things as well. And
Yeah.
I find myself having to recenter myself in the middle as best I can and not leaning one way or the other too much because
Yeah.
bias can creep in so easily with stuff like that and lead you down the wrong path.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll dig in a little bit more about that because I'm very curious to hear how are you measuring success and what the output is like. But I want to ask you, so you've led various TA across very recognizable brands. What has the experience taught you in building a talent strategy that reflects the brand?
When I think about recognizable brands, I've been so fortunate over the years to be able to put like these logos up on my LinkedIn profile and have them be recognizable. But from a talent perspective, there's so much that's expected from our candidates, prospective talent in terms of the consumer brand having a role to play in the I guess the recruiting experience, if you will, and further into the employee experience as well. Like Canada Goose was very much about go explore, conquer your environment. And when we really got into it, we got to a phase where, okay, we can't just throw bodies at a problem. We really need to focus on quality here. We had to build a brand promise, like a manifesto of sorts that really spoke to that Canada Goose is a place where you need to lean in, you need to be curious, you need to take action. Because if you were this consumer that is being built around like going to the Arctic with one of their great parkas, you have to be that type of individual in that environment. And we tried to draw parallels in the talent experience, the talent acquisition experience, to ensure that we were pulling people in that not only aligned with the consumer brand and were just amped about working for the company, but also demonstrated the right characteristics for where we were going as an organization. We were still scaling. When I started, we were opening up manufacturing facilities. Retail wasn't even in existence yet. And we
Right.
built multiple manufacturing sites across Canada. We opened up retail around the world.
Yeah, I remember your brand exploding. One period, it was like everywhere I looked, Canada Goose is everywhere, including social media. It was literally everywhere. So you guys did a great job, obviously, on the marketing side of things.
Yeah, from the marketing side, I think there was a period of time there where Canada Goose was best in class.
Yeah.
It was really inspiring to be on that wagon as things were happening, but
Yeah.
you wanted people that were there with the same sort of excitement and motivation to really contribute and lean in. It's not easy to do that. I added 5,000 plus people in my time there, and it's not something that comes easily. There's a
That's
lot.
scale.
It was amazing, but you really needed people that understood what they were contributing to yourself. I
Right.
remember meeting with the CMO as I interviewed there, and he said, joining this company, you're part of something that's bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? What does that mean to you? And that's resonated with me. And I think it's helped actually take me to brands like Knix, where I'm at today, where the work I'm doing, yeah, I'm like putting somebody into a finance role or finding another retail associate, but finding the right people that understand what they're contributing to this idea of adding to the mission, normalizing the taboos, making young women or women of any age feel comfortable in their own skin with great products. That's a life-changing product. And even though you might be an accountant, you're still contributing to that. And I think it's really wonderful as a TA person to try and develop experiences with my team, with hiring managers in the business that draw that connection, that build those parallels.
What did you take then from your time at Canada Goose to Knix that was transferable? Because they're both retail in the retail space and both growing brands that everybody knows. Was there any correlation or anything you took from your time at Canada Goose over at Knix?
I think when I was at Canada Goose, I was a younger, less gray-haired version of myself. When I walked in the door there, it was very much about the hustle, get the job filled as quickly as possible. And as I matured there, it became really important to me to make sure that we had good foundations as I bring new leaders into the business, as we build up a new department from scratch, that people coming into that understand how we're going to recruit and why it's important to recruit that way. Coming to Knix, that's been foundational to how we're approaching the work that we do. Making sure that a new store manager opening up in a new market understands what the talent profile looks for, why we ask the specific questions that we do through the interview process, and then what their role is beyond just asking questions. How do they provide a great experience that, again, aligns to the brand? I think that's been instrumental in how we've been able to scale so quickly, get people excited about working for the team at Knix. And then along the way, too, solving real business problems like improving retention and reducing turnover. We want people to come in, have a really good idea of what they're stepping into, why it's maybe going to be challenging along the way, but why it's so exciting to be a part of that challenge.
Do you find that with brands like Knix and Canada Goose, as a talent leader, the challenge is that everybody recognizes the brand, so everybody wants to be part of this journey. And so, for your talent team, is that a capacity constraint in the sense that you have so many applicants that are applying, and therefore, like, how do we get through those applicants? Because there's going to be a great candidate within that pool of applicants, on top of the fact that you're going to do your hunting as well. Is that something that you guys think about? Is that something that is a challenge?
100%. I
Yeah.
think we are the shiny toy in a lot of ways, and everybody wants to play. That does mean we're an applicant-rich organization at Knix, and at Canada Goose, that was certainly the case as well. But as that takes time for recruiters to get through that. And when I was at Canada Goose, we did a ton in terms of systems optimization to try and get through to the most qualified people as quickly as we could and look for the passion within that. Because there's the realities too of, from an employer brand perspective, the risk of bringing somebody into the organization that doesn't quite get what it's like to work there. Both organizations are very much this, we're building the plane while we fly it kind of thing. And they see this external facade, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of hard work that goes into the decision making, into the design and the strategy of how this plane actually flies. It's a top to bottom of funnels like assessment to make sure that we are not just efficient in how we identify the right people, but like really taking a quality driven approach to ensuring their success. And that might mean giving certain things up along the way. We have to be able to negotiate with ourselves to be able to contribute to the long term.
When you stepped into the role at Knix, was there a major challenge that you immediately diagnosed the candidate experience and recruiting process that you said, okay, I need to go in and change and improve immediately?
There were a couple of things that really came to light quickly. One was, I guess, just to give a little bit of context, I stepped in and the people team leadership almost completely flipped. And we were without a chief people officer at the time. I didn't have any overlap with the previous TA director. I got a bit of context, but I was hearing about this very, very scrappy startup sort of environment that didn't have a lot of rigor to it. And that became incredibly clear to me as I dove into the applicant tracking system and started trying to pull data out to build a story. And there wasn't much of a story to be told because the data integrity was really reflective of the process and the lack of rigor and governance that had gone along with the processes that were there. And I remember one of my recruiters at the time telling me, yeah, like we just let the hiring managers do whatever they want. And
Wow. That's a scary thought as a talent
yes.
leader, allowing the
And don't
hiring
get me
manager.
wrong, like
Yeah,
everybody is leveraging their
of course.
expertise. They're going in it with the best of intention. But when you're
Yeah.
trying to scale an organization and you're looking at your hiring beyond just the individual hire at that moment in time, you have to think more systematically and holistically about how you're approaching the business.
Yeah.
And we've seen little things over the last year, like documenting feedback as an example, how that not happening, there's a direct correlation between that and where we see turnover in the organization as well. So in the last year and a half, it's really been around standardization, on around process. And we're getting to a place now that we've got the different checkpoints along the way that we're going to start being able to bring in an increasing sort of behavioral approach to how we select talent within the organization. But it's meant a lot of partnership. It's meant no, hiring manager, you can't do whatever you want anymore. Although it seems logical what you're doing, let's take a step back and really think about what that means for the way you're selecting talent, what it means for the candidate experience, what it means for the long-term benefits to your team. So there's really been a shift from order taking, if you will,
Yeah.
to actual like talent partnership within the organization.
So it sounds like consistency is very important, right? And consistency
Yes.
drives efficiency. When you put those systems in place, did you see a marked difference? And what was the stuff that you put in place?
Standardized process includes, for me, things like a great kickoff process. So the
Yeah.
intake meeting that you have at the beginning of the process, having that standardized. I think great organizations have really hitched onto that. There's the partnership along the way outside of just like an individual recruiting process to really understand what's happening at a business level so that as a recruiter, a talent acquisition partner, you can contribute to that meaningfully as you're looking at talent. But the kickoff meeting was really important because that sets the stage not only for understanding what the requirements are, but working with hiring managers on what the process is going to look like, not just from a steps perspective, but we're a fast moving business. We're somewhat lean. I think any organization is going to say that, but like you're competing with the realities of what happens in the business day to day. And if it's a backfill position, that team's down a body, people are getting stretched, including the
Yeah.
hiring manager that you're working with. But there's a need to sit down and talk to them about the realities of the process from a week to week perspective so
Right.
that you're not getting bogged down with a delay and like photo shoots. If we're working with our marketing team, they could be off site for a week. Okay, how do we work around that? How do we manage candidate expectations through that? So, like, almost immediately, we were able to bring our time to hire down by weeks, like
Yeah.
significant impact in such a short amount of time. And then from there, we've been able to establish like better inbound data from a strategic perspective with our people team, stuff out of performance reviews, talent reviews, exit interview information, so that we go in there again, thinking more holistically about how to approach these searches.
Yeah.
And we're seeing not just the recruiting efficiency come into play here, we're seeing better candidate experience because people are moving through quickly. They have accurate expectations on what the job actually looks like. They're excited about the brand, but they're excited about how they can come in and solve these problems that are the realities that we're facing today.
Yeah, I would say like that really drives the culture on the talent side. If something like consistent happens and you guys can now know there's a clear direction that you guys are all going towards. For an organization like yours where you're hiring across different demographic population, how do you maintain that consistency in terms of hiring for those roles and making sure that there's no bias and you making sure that everybody's hiring in the same kind of manner? Is there
Yeah.
a trick or is there a process or best practice that you can share?
So there's two things. One coming like a really easy one. We need to make sure that people know what biases look like,
Yeah.
right? There's so much that's important in education around bias, just so that you walk in aware of how to formulate maybe a less biased opinion. We're all going to have a subconscious bias, and that's the reality of things. It's up to talent acquisition and our people team, and I think just leaders in general, to make sure that we're calling each other out on those blind spots. But it starts with a good foundation. The other thing that we've done that's been massively helpful, we actually just kicked this off at the end of 2025, is we're using AI to develop more streamlined interview processes. And when I say the process, it's the tools that were used with it. So at the beginning of the process, before we even have the kickoff meeting, we get the job description, of course. We have moved to a form first approach for the kickoff meeting. So rather than, again, the order taking mentality where you fill out a kickoff meeting form in that meeting and you're focused on typing down the information, hiring manager answers those questionnaires before we actually sit down and have the conversation. And then we
Right.
use that meeting to validate the information that they've
Okay.
entered in there.
Yeah.
And once we wrap up that meeting, we do a couple of things. Job descriptions go into Google Gemini. They get compared against that kickoff meeting form. Job descriptions are updated to make sure that they're attractive to the candidate using exclusive language, but they're also highlighting the things that were really important in that discussion that we just had.
Hmm.
Once we've got that job description in the right place, we take both of those forms, put it through another prompt in Gemini to
Yeah.
spit out all of the interview guides. So it's not just those two files, though. We have leveraged our behavioral competencies so
Yeah.
that every job is up against the organizational performance expectations.
Right.
So we're taking the same framework that is used at mid-year and year-end performance reviews and bringing it into the beginning of every single search and assessing performance with our candidates the same way they're going to be assessed effectively once they get into the job itself. And that allows us, and it's really done a wonderful job of bringing in candidates that are more aligned
Yeah.
with how we work at Knix.
It's a
And
great selling tool too, because now the candidate can envision themselves working at Knix.
it's so massive. I think even from like a talent acquisition person's perspective as well, being able to sell the way that we work. Why do we approach cross-functional partnership the way that we do? Why is that important to us? Like, it's rooted in the questions that you're asking.
Yeah.
And I think it's just done an amazing job with our conversion rates towards the top of the process, where like we're not having to screen as many individuals, or at least the individuals making it through the hiring manager round. Like, there's solid options in there because they not just meet the job spec, but they understand the Knix culture as well.
In terms of where AI can create meaningful value for talent teams today, is there other areas that you see AI creating real value within the hiring process?
Time for sure. Like, talking about Ribbon as an example, like we've saved 20 to 25% of the weeks as we approach a new store opening by leveraging Ribbon. Like, that interview time back is massive for us. I really want to figure out scheduling. Like, there's like self-scheduling options that are often native to applicant tracking systems now, but it's the back and forth negotiation sometimes and coordination that I think is really where talent can get bogged down.
Yeah.
Recruiters can get bogged down as well, doing that back and forth. I don't want to take the human approach out of it too much, but that is something that I think outside of the actual screening, interview scheduling is one of those time drains for my team.
As a recruiter, it's the most annoying thing, right?
It really is. And there's some great tools that are out there. I think applicant tracking systems are starting to get smarter about this as well. Applicant tracking systems have resume screening like that, and that's been around for years. I remember Taleo back in the day. I thought it was the coolest thing to assign a score based on keywords. Now that's the expectation. I really want applicant tracking systems to like level up. And there's a lot of really great stuff with data sophistication getting better within applicant tracking systems too. So you're not just comparing a resume to a job spec anymore, you're comparing it against previous hire data, where feedback is taking you in terms of what a great candidate looks like, what a bad candidate looks like, to help assess with that. So it's more machine learning there, but it's helping recruiters narrow in on the best talent a little bit quicker. One thing that I think is so simple and massively underutilized is building talent profiles. So whether that's for a specific team or the organization at large, pulling resumes out of your ATS, of your best hires, your top performers in the company, putting that through Gemini or Claude, whatever system that you choose to use, having that do an analysis on what the common characteristics look like. What organizations are they coming from? What are the types of organizations are they coming from? What level were they at before they stepped into the level that they're in here at Knix? What does good look like? Like, we have great instincts as recruiters, but I think where a lot of people really lack skills in this field is being able to contextualize their gut instinct.
Yeah.
And that's where like I've really leaned into data over the years, is to help with that storytelling. I had a great leader years ago talking to me like, every candidate is a story, every organization is a story. And it's about marrying those things together.
Yeah.
The data helps bring that to the business. You walk into the CEO's office or any other executive within the organization, numbers talk. And it's not always dollars and cents. We're a cost center within the organization, but how are you adding value where they've recognized that value has come from previously? It's just such a simple approach to helping define and get buy-in on the types of profiles that we need to look at, and even identifying where we can take maybe logical bets. Where do we maybe think a little bit more non-traditionally about approaching a talent profile?
You see a world where the AI will replace 90% of the recruiting process.
I might be a little biased from just the types of organizations that I've worked with, where direct to consumer, that human connection is just so inherent to the brands. But just even thinking about AI, big picture, not recruiting, but the world over, I'd like to think that people are going to like the easier life that they get with AI, but they're going to increasingly crave human connection. And when I think about like where I go to work, where most people spend most of their time in a week, that human connection is going to become increasingly important. Yeah, AI can take care of the administration. It can help you build strategies. It can help with candidate identification, but nobody wants to hear, and Ribbon's got great voice AI there. I think they're really going to want to know that they're talking to a human about what it's like to work there, hear something that's real and that's not necessarily perfectly said, because that's authentic. I do think that element of authenticity is going to be necessary to picking the right people for the job without things becoming so transactional
Yeah.
with your human resources that you lose culture, that you lose enthusiasm for your brand. And again, like for us, where we're talking about young women getting their period for the first time, that requires a human element. If
Yeah.
your AI isn't in a place where it can properly assess that, and I do think Ribbon's done a really good job of this. I know there are other tools that are really trying to lean into cultural fit. There's something to be said about that in-person interaction, feeling the energy in the room, knowing, again, sticking to your gut, knowing how something feels in context versus just reading it off a page. I think that's always going to be there, but it'll be really interesting to see how this unfolds. But I hope for our careers that it doesn't get wiped out completely.
No, you know what? Well, and I believe that as well. I honestly believe both are going to coexist together. I think, and we talk about human in loop here all the time. And the AI is going to make a lot of the processes more efficient in certain areas, which basically just tees up the best candidates that you want to have those deep conversations with earlier and faster. And I think that's really the
Yes.
key is that there's so much noise these days and it's so easy for candidates to apply that you want to get through the noise as fast as possible to have those conversations with those candidates. And I think AI is going to help. I do believe that you're never going to take that human out of that conversation.
I agree with you. I think like it can be very systematically beneficial to unlock a recruiter's ability to really focus on the human side of things. And like note taking is a really great example here where like I don't have to type in a screen anymore. My mind is not split. And then going back to my notes to make sure that I document everything correctly, I can really be in the moment with that person, not just learning about them, but selling them this great opportunity and creating advocates and ambassadors for having a career at our company in the future. That's what I think most organizations are going to really want to lean into as this world, again, beyond recruiting unlocks itself with AI. There's a lot of new shiny things out there right now, but it's like what at the end of the day, human connection is what it all comes back to. How do we enable that in the best, most authentic way?
So then imagine 5 years from now, where do you see recruiting? I know it's a hard
Oh
question
man.
to answer just because it's changing so rapidly and fast. In 5 years, sitting in your seat, what recruiting will look like?
So one thing that was talked about a lot, especially pre-pandemic, was skills-based hiring.
Right.
I don't think that got to the same level of scale as what certain organizations were able to do, where your skills are basically quantifiable.
Mm.
We're getting to a place now where you can be codified
Mhm.
as a talent.
Right.
And I do see that playing a greater role. I
Mhm.
think there's going to be a lot more data sharing that way about what humans are and what they bring to the table. I don't know if that's necessarily within a 5 year timeline. I think there's a human rights component to that as well, where
Mhm.
we're going to have to really have some really tough conversations from a government perspective about what that means. Because the skill that I have today, are we going to be able to capture any learning, any education that I've taken on to sharpen that skill over time? How do we like mold that into the framework, into the architecture? But I do see a place where your skills are a lot easier to assess
Yeah.
and that it comes back to the human side of things.
And does that mean that the skill would have to be as up to date? People are moving around much more frequently. How do you capture in real time those skills and make sure it's relevant?
I think that could be it. This was, I think, beginning of 2025. I was at or a little seminar, and they were just talking. You talked about your dad not changing jobs so often. Like AI alone, unlocking how fast people can learn skills is going to increase the rate that people are switching jobs.
Mm.
And I think there's something in that as
Yeah.
well. Like I can learn new skills incredibly quickly. I can automate things that took me forever to do before that were slowing me down in my career. Like I think there's going to be a new level of agility here. And maybe gig work comes back the way that it really was getting prevalent before and through the pandemic. Like there's speed for sure is definitely
Yeah.
going to be a thing. But yeah, when I think about recruiting, I think skills-based hiring really being embedded in that. The other thing that's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. And I don't have an answer to this or a prediction, but like we have this real conflict right now between employer and candidate because we're leveraging the heck out of AI tools right now to assess and find talent, give great experiences, leverage the data, et cetera. But we hate when candidates are using AI on their
Yeah.
resumes or to help them out in an interview. It's this really funny thing. And I think it goes back to authenticity as well. It's like people are always looking for a leg up, whether it's the
Yeah.
organization or the individual. where does that balance get sorted out? And is it the skills-based hiring thing? Take the guesswork out of what somebody can bring to the table and let's do more personality assessments. Let's make sure that this person's going to come in, not be a jerk, can really add to the organization and do the skills that they get on their code list or their skills list.
Yeah, that skills based hiring that you mentioned is interesting too, because I also see a world where there's going to be people that haven't built up their profile in terms of skills. And I think automatically blue collar, white collar, we live on LinkedIn. We're so accustomed to documenting all of our experiences because we know we're going to have to move in 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, and we need to present ourselves in a certain way. Then you have another group of individuals in society who isn't documenting that. They don't have a resume or they don't know how to present themselves. We see two very distinct groups going in very different direction. And I wonder where that's going to lead us down the line in 5 years from now.
I think you mentioned blue collar versus white collar. I think there's already a shift that's happening that nobody's talking about, like what blue collar looks like today.
Yeah.
We think about this like manufacturing, machine operators, and customer service, call centers, that type of environment. How many software developers are out there building the same way that a machine operator would build, but in a digital perspective?
Right.
And yeah, it's a really fascinating sort of like world to try and plot out in the future, like from a, yeah, like accessibility perspective. Like I think about rural communities like in Northern Ontario here in Canada that, yeah, they like go to work at a grocery store or they're a bank teller or
Yeah.
they're an arborist. They chop down trees for a living. Are we going to get to a place where it's like your key to the city in these metropolises, and then there's a very different world outside of that? Like it's really fascinating to think how this world's going to take shape in the next few years.
I'm very curious to see what it's going to be like in 5 years. I think what we should do is revisit in a few years, and you and I should have another follow-up podcast and see what has changed over that period of time. Last question for you really is tell the audience something about yourself that they should know and share a little glimpse and insight into who you are.
Oh man, I think within the way that I work, the way I assess people, talking about discovering their motivations, determining who's good and who's not. As a recruiter, I don't know if people talk about it enough, how emotionally draining that can be and how that can actually weigh on your psyche. And over the years, the last decade in particular, where mental health has become an increasingly bigger conversation, I think that for recruiters, I've seen it with other individuals as well, that rejection that's naturally a part of the recruiter's career can weigh on somebody. And I felt it personally as well. I would just say to recruiters who are having to say no to candidates, do it with respect and love. When you get rejected about a candidate that you're particularly passionate about, be curious, learn from those moments, don't take it personally. Really try and think about how to move forward with the best of intentions going through those experiences. But yeah, it's dealing with people. Like I said, it's not an easy thing, but it can be incredibly rewarding when you get a phone call from a candidate accepting an offer. They're in tears. They're so jazzed about where they're going to be able to work, and you helped unlock that. Might be a bumpy road to get there, but those phone calls, and they don't happen every time. But when they do, man, they live with you. They carry you forward to the next one.
Yeah, you make such an impact in their lives, right? And they remember that impact because that's a moment for them, and you had a hand in that. I love that you brought up that topic because I don't think that's talked enough in a recruiting space. We do deal with a lot of rejection. It is an emotional roller coaster. When I was doing this, even today, sometimes you get really attached to people. You empathize or you relate to those individuals, and it does weigh on you at times. And so I love that you bring up a topic for our industry. And I think it's a topic that should be talked about more.
I think we carry a lot of pride as recruiters. As a corporate recruiter, I have to swallow my pride and get an agency involved every once in a while and leverage the right level of expertise. But like hearing that your candidate that you were excited about didn't do great in an interview with an executive, like you throw your head back, you feel like you let somebody down sometimes. Like that's going to happen. It's again, what can you learn from it? How do you move forward? Just keeping that perspective is, I think, incredibly important. And I'll say that I've struggled at times with it through the years, but it makes you stronger. It makes you more calculated. It's about reflection and action. It's the best way to get forward with it.
First of all, I want to thank you for your time. And I've learned a lot in our
Thanks.
conversation, and that was great. I got to peer into your process, what you think the future of hiring and recruiting will be as well. And
Mm,
also get to learn a little bit about yourself as well as being a girl dad. We'll have to share some notes. But
yeah,
thank you
we
so
will.
much for taking time to share your story to the audience and give us insight into what you're doing. Look forward to the next conversation.
Thanks for having me, Dave. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Adam.
Take care.